A reading from Genesis 1, verse 1 through chapter 2, verse 4. When God began to create the heavens and the earth was without shape or form. It was dark over the deep sea, and God's wind swept over the waters. God said, "Let there be light," and so light appeared. God saw how good the light was. God separated the light from the darkness. God named the light day and the darkness night. There was evening and there was morning the first day. God said, "Let there be a dome in the middle of the waters to separate the waters from each other." God made the dome and separated the waters under the dome from the waters above the dome, and it happened in that way, and God named the dome sky. There was evening and there was morning the second day. God said, "Let the waters under the sky come together into one place so that the dry land can appear." And that's what happened. God named the dry land earth, and he named the gathered water seas. God saw how good it was. God said, "Let the earth grow plant life, plants yielding seeds and fruit trees bearing fruit with seeds inside it, each according to its kind throughout the earth." And that's what happened. The earth produced plant life, plants yielding seeds, each according to its kind, and trees bearing fruit with seeds inside it, each according to its kind. God saw how good it was. There was evening and there was morning the third day. God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night. They will mark events, sacred seasons, days, and years. There will be lights in the dome of the sky to shine on the earth." And that's what happened. God made the stars and two great lights, the larger light to rule over the day, and the smaller light to rule over the night. God put them in the dome of the sky to shine on the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. God saw how good it was. There was evening and there was morning the fourth day. God said, "Let the water swarm with living things, and let birds fly above the earth up in the dome of the sky." And God created the great sea animals and all the tiny living things that swarm in the waters, each according to its kind, and all the winged birds, each according to its kind. God saw how good it was. Then God blessed them, "Be fertile and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth." There was evening and there was morning the fifth day. God said, "Let the earth produce every kind of living thing, livestock, crawling things, and wildlife." And that's what happened. God made every kind of wildlife, every kind of livestock, and every kind of creature that crawls on the ground. God saw how good it was. Then God said, "Let us make humanity in our image to resemble us, so that they may take charge of the fish of the sea, the birds in the sky, the livestock, all the earth, and all the crawling things on earth." God created humanity in God's own image. In the divine image, God created them, male and female. God created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fertile and multiply. Fill the earth and master it. Take charge of the fish of the sea, the birds in the sky, and everything crawling on the ground." And then God said, "I now give to you all the plants on the earth that yield seeds, and all the trees whose fruit produces its seeds within it. These will be your food. To all wildlife, to all the birds in the sky, and to everything crawling on the ground, to everything that breathes, I give all the green grasses for food." And that's what happened. God saw everything he had made. It was supremely good. There was evening and there was morning the sixth day. The heavens and the earth and all who live in them were completed. On the sixth day, God completed all the work that she had done, and on the seventh day, God rested from all the work that they had done. God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all the work of creation. This is the account of the heavens and the earth when they were created. May God help us to apply these words to our lives. Let it be so. I invite you to take a deep breath with me. Let us breathe in and breathe out. Today, we begin a new sermon series titled Brokenness to Blessing. Over the next several weeks, we will be looking at texts from Genesis and Exodus that will highlight the messiness of life and how God calls forth blessings from that mess. We begin this series with the story of creation. And so often we imagine that God created the earth out of nothing. But when we read the first chapter of Genesis, we realize that God begins not with nothing, but rather with darkness over a deep sea that had no shape or form. This is chaos. It's uncertainty. We might even call it a mess. And out of it, God creates order and boundaries and all that we know and see. We hear through the text that God creates light and that God separates the light from the darkness that was over the deep, creating the very first boundary of creation. Then God created the atmosphere and the sky by separating the waters above from the waters below, creating yet another boundary. God then creates dry land, the earth, by gathering up the seas and establishing yet another boundary. And then God creates plant life and all its many seeds. And it is only then that God creates the sun and the moon, and God places the stars in the sky, creating a boundary before day and night, between winter and spring, between planting and harvesting. And then God fills the oceans and the air with birds and all manner of creation. On the sixth day, God created the animals and then humanity. And God blessed them like God blessed the plants to be fruitful and to multiply. In this way, God calls forth the creative energy of plants and animals and humans to continue creating, to produce, to grow, to change, to evolve, to be creative. God gives the power, the creative energy to continue this work to all of creation. God does not hoard this power, the power to make life possible. Now, you might have noticed that as we read Genesis 1 together, that each day God saw what God had created and called it good. But on the sixth day, when God created the animals and humanity, God did not say that it was good. If we look closely at the text, it is only when God looks upon all that God has created, the sun and the moon, the oceans and the dry land, the birds and the plants, all the animals, and humanity, and how it all fits together as a whole. When God saw all of that, God claimed that creation was supremely good. In other words, humanity in and of itself was not good, but rather only when we fit and are in harmony with all of creation that our goodness, our blessedness can be seen. And yet for centuries we have believed the opposite. We have believed that humans are the center of all creation. After all, we were placed in the middle of the garden, right? And on top of this, we have believed that mastering creation meant that we could do whatever we wanted to this planet, to all that's on it. And so we have. We have dug holes in this earth to extract things like coal to harness energy, diamonds so we can look pretty, limestone to make medicine, oil to run our machines. We have destroyed whole forests for highways and railroads, housing developments, and a variety of other things. We have overfished, so some of the animals of the sea are barely surviving, if not gone extinct. We have polluted the very air we breathe, the water we drink, and the food we eat. We have not only mastered creation in our imaginations, but we have also dominated it, conquered it, and destroyed it. also we could fulfill our every desire, believing that humans are above all other parts of the created order. And by doing so, we have crossed every boundary that God created, boundaries that allowed life to be possible in places it might not have existed. God created this beautiful world, and we created brokenness. Brokenness that we can see in the seas, in the air, on the land, and in our very bodies. This brokenness was very evident to me this week as I found myself reading two similar articles. The first I found in the Wall Street Journal. It was an essay by Michaeline Doucleff, which told of her family's decision to stop eating ultra-processed foods for a month. Ultra-processed foods have been linked to obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular diseases. Almost 60% of a children's calories come from ultra-processed foods. Now, if you're wondering what an ultra-processed food is, the answer is complicated because scientists do not yet agree on an easy way to identify these foods. In the article, though, Doucleff and her family decided to use a very simple definition that even her 8-year-old could understand. They decided that any food that had an ingredient that they didn't use at home or they could barely pronounce would not be bought or eaten. In addition, they eliminated foods with artificial flavors and refined flours. This meant that the family gave up most crackers, cereals, pretzels, granola bars, bagels, milk chocolate, and flavored sparkling water. Doucleff's family discovered that by eliminating these items, they stopped thinking about food constantly, and their snacking dropped. Scientific studies have shown that exposure to unhealthy snacks shifts our desires and our preferences so that we no longer want or even crave healthy food. Other research has also shown that switching to a similar diet as Doucleff's family can also improve one's mental health. The other article I read was written by Tracy Woodruff in the Washington Post. This article was about microplastics, which are really very small pieces of plastic. Some of them are visible to the naked eye, but many others are so tiny you can't even see them. Scientists have found microplastics in our livers, our blood, and our brains. We are exposed to microplastics through plastic cooking utensils, plastic bags and packaging, plastic food storage, especially if we microwave it, plastic cups, and plastic water bottles. Scientific studies are beginning to show that these microplastics can negatively affect our reproductive health, as well as our digestive and respiratory health. There's also evidence that suggests that microplastics are potential causes of chronic inflammation, which could increase the risks of colon and lung cancer. Other studies show a link between microplastics and dementia and cardiovascular disease. So while there's still much to learn about microplastics, there is enough evidence that that should make us concerned about their effects on our bodies. Now, human actions, past and present, which have created and marketed the use of microplastics in ultra-processed food, have caused brokenness. Brokenness that we have woven into creation, which has caused humanity to be out of harmony with the earth. And because of this, our bodies are suffering and our health is deteriorating. Our uncontrolled desire to tame and conquer the created world has caused chaos rather than order to multiply. Brokenness rather than blessing to become the human experience. In other words, we have made a mess. And yet we are not without hope. There are ways to reduce our exposure to microplastics and ultra processed food, ways to come into greater harmony with creation. Ways like avoiding packaged and ultra processed foods because plastic related chemicals are commonly found in ultra processed and fast foods rather than those that we prepare at home. Avoid microwaving plastics or using plastic water bottles. Minimize dust in your home as microplastics love to hang out in dust. Use fragrance free personal care products and cleaning products because many cleaning products that are used for scrubbing have microplastics in them. And companies that use fragrances often place them in microplastics so that they will last longer. These are very tangible ways to come into alignment with God's creation. But there is also hope in realizing that God was able to create this whole world out of the darkness and the deep seas that Genesis speaks of. And in doing so, God called forth our own creative power to be fruitful and to multiply, to live in harmony with creation. God gave us the power to change, to revert, to reconcile, to repent. And God gave us the power to take the mess we have created, our own brokenness, and turn it into blessing, to make order out of the mess, to return to harmony, to return to a place of creative mastery where coaxing life into being is our highest priority. Now, this is not easy work, but moving from brokenness to blessing never is. So, over the next several weeks, we will see how saints of our faith did just that. They moved from brokenness to blessing. And I hope that we will discover that that same strength and power and patience and creativity that they had is within us too. Amen.